Baseball has the All-Star Game. Football has the Pro Bowl. But for the Dirt Modifieds, their All-Star event is the A-Plus Mini Markets 25-mile Modified Classic. Here at Syracuse, the third race of our Saturday triple header. And the drivers having a good time with this one. There they all are, and Danny Johnson and Billy Pouch down there on Victory Square. It's yuck time right now, but it's going to get serious in a couple of minutes. Let's go down to Brian Spaid. He has the defending champion.
Bob, well, coming back maybe 2 in a row for the A-Plus Winners Classic, especially with an up-front start.
Possible, you know, but it's down there in that on the restart, the first start, we got a really bad spot. The outside's dry, dusty, and rough, and I'm just hoping I can come out of there and still be in second, not third, fourth, fifth, you know. So after that, we can race, but the first restart's going to be really tough.
Is this going to be a real test for your car for tomorrow?
Probably, because I don't think the track's going to get any better than it is right now.
And Bob McCready won this race last year by passing this man, Danny Johnson, on the very last lap of the 25-miler. It was probably one of the most memorable races of Super Dirt Week 89. McCready will have to go from the outside front row to repeat today. Right behind him will be Danny Johnson. They're adjusting the brake pedal on Danny Johnson's number 28J. Danny, a tough afternoon, as you recall. In his small block modified, he had motor problems in his heat. He did get a 5th place finish just then, but already trouble with the modified here for the big block event. Let's go down to Pat O'Brien, see his thoughts as the cars get ready to go to the grid.
Pat O'Brien, well, from Can-Am to Syracuse, congratulations on at least getting yourself a good ride.
Well, thank you, Brian. It's good to be here.
Now, is this a big block today?
Yeah, that's the 406, the same one we run at Can-Am. I think we're a little shy on horsepower here for Syracuse. We're just out to get some experience and, you know, see what we can do.
What's your plan for this race? Basically sit back?
Well, we're starting 7th, and the track's pretty hard to pass. I'm just going to try and run as hard as I can and hold my line. And, you know, for me to pull out and try and pass some of these big blocks would be impossible. So I'm just going to try and ride it out and see what I get.
Well, we wish you luck.
Thank you.
And as the field starts to pull out onto the mile for the third of 3 events in one day, Tom Skibinski joins me here in the tower as the color commentator. Tom pulling a hat trick today as well. Tom, what's your thoughts on this one?
Well, before, Andy, you mentioned this was the All-Star race, and the starting field was derived from the winners during the Skoal Racing Super Dirt Series during the summer. Brett Hearn getting the pole with 6 wins during the summer. Bob McCready, the outside pole, with 4 wins. He's looking for his 3rd payday after picking up $2,500 for the pole and $4,000 for his triple 20 heat win.
Brian Spaid is our pit reporter today, down to Brian in the Danny Johnson pit.
Dave Jacobs, member of the Danny Johnson crew. What was the problem?
We had a Zeus tab in the way. It was binding on the brake pedal.
Okay, now explain to the fans what a Zeus tab is.
It's a tab that has a spring on it to hold all the body panels on.
So what was happening was when Danny was pushing his foot down, that would hit that tab and the brakes wouldn't apply, right?
That's right.
Okay, did you get it fixed?
Yeah.
Hopefully it'll stay.
Yeah, it'll stay.
Here's the starting lineup. Brett Hearn and Bob McCready in row number 1. Row 2, Danny Johnson and Doug Hoffman. Row 3, Steve Payne and Pat O'Brien. Row 4, Kevin Collins and Frank Cozy. Row 5, Jeff Trombley and Billy the Kid Pouch. Row 6, Billy Van Pelt and Kenny Tremont. Row 7, Billy Decker and Mike Romano. Row 8, Mitch Gibbs and Mark Kenyon. Row 9, Bob Kraus and Lou Blaney. Row 10, Tommy Hager and Jack Johnson. Row 11, Eddie Marshall and Joe Plazik. Row 12, Robert Ranger. Pete McNell and Dave Lape were also scheduled to start this one, but they haven't reported to the grid. They've got mechanical difficulties. Starting back there in position number 4 will be Doug Hoffman, the Billy Taylor number 1. Let's hear his thoughts before the event.
Doug, is this going to be a real test for your team for tomorrow's race?
Yeah, this ends up being a real good warm-up, you know. Starting in the second row, we have a good shot at it and all that, but we just concentrate on getting the car dialed in for tomorrow's show.
How does it feel to run for Billy here?
I really enjoy running for Billy. He's a great guy. You know, the crew, they do a super job all week long. I don't think there's anybody that works harder, and I've had a lot of fun this week.
Is that Skoal Series point title in the back of your mind?
Well, you know, I hate coming into this race with that type of pressure, and of course, as much as you don't want to think about it, how can you not? You know, we've raced all year towards Skoal Super Dirt Series points, and it hinges on this race tomorrow.
Strategy for today's 25-lap A-Plus race?
Well, you know, we're going to test everybody. You know, we're going to see how strong we are as compared to the guys in front of us. I hope we're stronger.
Good luck.
Thanks, Brian.
Okay, the sun begins to set here at Syracuse. This is the last race of the day, and the shadows are long and the sunlight bright. The driver's now directly going into that westward sun. The field bunching for the start. Gaston Sylvestre up perched upon the starter's stand. The 21 cars that are reported to the starting grid are grouped together. They're starting, and the green flag is not out. Bob McCready has jumped away from Brett Hearn, and Gaston now throws the green flag. The race is underway, but he turns and immediately brings out the yellow flag. There's an interesting turn of events right off the start. Tom Skibinski.
Well, I can hear the crowd booing. They love Bob McCready, and they don't like Brett Hearn. We'll see if Gaston comes down and gives Bob the point of the flag. I'm sure they'll be restarting, and Bob McCready, we'll see if he lays back, but I'm sure Brett Hearn won't give him a chance.
Fascinating, the mind games that go on here. We heard Bob McCready tell Brian Spaid that he was more worried about being 4th or 5th at the end of turn number 1 than he was about being 1st. Well, that story just went out the old window because he blew by Brett Hearn on that start. He was a good 4 or 5 car lengths ahead by the time the field came down and out of turn number 4. McCready really does want to lead lap number 1 of this one. And there's Gaston Salves. He's the starter up in the Montreal area, Granby and Drummondville. And now he points to Bob McCready and says, this is the green flag. I'll throw the green flag. Don't start until I throw the green flag. That's a lesson in how to start a race that Bob McCready doesn't need to know. He knows the rules darn well, Tom.
Yeah, Bob's been around a while. He got his 4 Syracuse qualifying victories this summer at Williams Grove. That was one of the openers, and Sanair and Cayuga on the asphalt, and his home track on Saturday night, Canandaigua Speedway.
And don't think that these drivers don't watch what goes on earlier in the day. I would dare say that Bob McCready, watching from the top of his hauler, is very aware of the fact that Brett Hearn snookered Matt Quinn on that restart in the 358 race to win it. He's well aware of the fact that Sammy Swindell snookered Wolfgang on the restart in the sprint car race, and he's about to do the same. Restarts have been the story today, and Brett Hearn and Bob McCready are going to have one heck of a race into turn number 1. Now Gaston is ready. The field is grouped. Gaston has the green in hand. He'll be the one wanting to start, and you can see already there's a problem. Bob McCready is well ahead of now Doug Hoffman, who is in 2nd place. Brett Hearn, who's supposed to bring the field down to the green, is already back to 3rd and 4th. And Gaston's not even going to bother to throw the green flag this time. The crowd is booing. I don't know if they're booing for Hearn, who's slowing up, or if they're booing for McCready, who appears to be jumping, Tom.
Well, I think it's very interesting. I think Brett Hearn is laying back. He's got one advantage. He ran early in the day in the small block and won the 50-lap championship. But I think he knows where all the holes are, and I think he wants to let Bob go out there. Bob's unaware exactly where the holes are. He wants to let him find them himself. He doesn't want to show him the groove and where the holes are and what he's going to be avoiding. It'll be interesting. 3rd time lucky, we'll find out.
Amazing here that this triple header, 3 different classes of cars, all have one common denominator today. Starts or restarts have been the story. The field is now bunched, but they're not going to get the green flag right now. The white is not waved, and the pace car has still stayed on to the speedway, and you can see the cornermen still throwing the yellow. Even though they're bunched, they're not going to get the green. This is not start time. I got a feeling this is going to be lecture time. There's Gaston Salves. He's got the black flag in hand, and McCready's day may come to an end before it's even started. The fans are going wild right now. They love Bob McCready. He's the most popular driver on the dirt circuit now 2 or 3 years running, and they don't like the fact that Gaston has the black flag, and right now he's giving him a warning. He's saying the next time you're going to see the black, if you don't let me and Brett Hearn, the pole sitter, start this one. Controversy before this one even gets underway, Tom.
Well, that's normally something saved for Danny Johnson controversy or a guy like C.D. Coville, but Bob McCready and Brett Hearn, they're not used to controversy. They're normally slick and they're professional and they get the job done on the track.
And on the track is where this one's going to be decided. This is a 25-mile race, but it's clear that the drivers think that the first 100 yards into turn number 1 is what's most important. Let's go on to Brian Spaid.
Hugh, what's going on out there? What was the story on the restarts? Was Bob telling you anything?
No, he didn't say anything about the restarts, just that some confusion as to how they want to start them. Brett was chugging on that last one, so I don't know. It's just a restart.
Joe South saying games people play. John Lennon saying mind games. That's our theme songs for today because that's exactly what's going on here in the front row. Brett Hearn and Bob McCready playing mental chess with each other. Who's going to lead this field down to the green flag? Gaston Salves has the green out. The field is side by side in the front row. The grandstand is going wild. We've got a good start, and Bob McCready charges into the front. Down into first turn, Bob McCready leading. Brett Hearn shuts the door on Doug Hoffman, who was charging for the 2nd spot. The field gets through turn number 1. A phenomenal start, and the crowd is going wild. Bob McCready is their favorite.
Well, Andy, that time I think Brett actually nudged out ahead of Bob, and Bob just played the game, stayed alongside him because he knew he was faster. Look at there, Bob already a 5-car length advantage over Hearn.
Hearn going to the outside of the holes. He knows where every hole in the racetrack is, as you developed earlier, Tom. He just did 50 laps in a small block modified, and right now he's about 15 car lengths behind Bob McCready. Bob McCready running down on the bottom, running through the holes. You can see the number 9 jumping up and down. He's got the pedal to the metal, and now the theme song is the Dave Clark's 5, Catch Me If You Can. Brett Hearn is running second and third. Doug Hoffman, Tom Skibinski. This one is an outstanding event for the big block modified.
Well, you look at the top 3 competitors up there, Bob McCready, Brett Hearn, and Doug Hoffman. There's not 3 better drivers in the Northeast. And there's Jack Johnson, a 2-time winner here at Syracuse in the Miller 300. He's got his fluorescent honey car, that painted by Dave Marr, the 12A.
Let's keep an eye on Jack Johnson. He is one of the favorites here at Syracuse. He had the fastest car in the Speedway here on Labor Day, but blew a tire and was sidelined. He started way back in 21st position. He's up to 18th place now in that Day Glow Orange, or honey if you want to call it, Tobias Taxi number 12A, a brand new car for Johnson, built especially for Syracuse. He brought it out of the box last week at Lebanon Valley. Last Thursday he tested the car at Lebanon Valley's High Bank Speedway and was turning in some pretty hot times clear out of the box. But this week here in Syracuse, Tom, he's had nothing but trouble.
Yes, throughout the week he's had trouble with the steering column. I know I was in the pits myself, and I talked to him and his pit crew, and they had some trouble displacing steering fluid throughout the practice sessions. This should be interesting to see how far Jack can go before, or if he has to at all, go into the pits today. I know he's been there quite a bit this week already.
Right now he's knocking on the back door of Billy Decker, who drives the Wheel Auto Parts number 91, the Wheel Auto Supply number 91. Decker's had a lot of tough luck this year as well in that number 91 dirt big block modified. He's been going through engines like blowing popcorn. And right now Jack Johnson is getting a challenge from the Mike Jeffrey number 24, but Jeffrey's not the driver today, Tom.
Well, a lot of Western New York race fans are used to seeing Mike Jeffrey behind the wheel of number 24 J. Averill Farms modified, but today it's the Sharon Speedway representative, Bob Kraus. He's sporting the 24J today in the CLM Winners Classic.
And Mike Romano slows to the infield there. He's the 97. That's the car that's smoking. Romano will be sidelined early in this one. Jack Johnson holding off Kraus's 24 as they go down the back straightaway. In front of Jack Johnson, though, Billy Decker pulling away. Jack Johnson not as strong as we had imagined, but let's continue to keep our eye on him. Meanwhile, up front, Bob McCready just motoring away from the field here in the A-Plus Mini Markets 25-mile modified Winners Classic. Jack Johnson now diving to the inside of turn number 1. He's obviously having some difficulty with that honey orange number 12A. The car's not as fast as he had wanted it to be. As I said on Labor Day, he had a Tobias car here that was the fastest car at Syracuse. That car did blow a tire while Jack was leading the event, so he didn't end up getting the win here on Labor Day. Jack brought that car as a backup car here this week. He time trialed it back on Wednesday, and it was faster than the car that he's got in this race. But he figures, hey, dance with the girl you brung. This is the car that I came here with this week to win this event. This is the one I'm going to run in the shakedown for tomorrow's Miller 300. Meanwhile, up front, high, wide, and handsome, Bob McCready in the number 9. He's had a stupendous season. Back in May, he won 5 races in one weekend, an all-time dirt record, Tom.
Yeah, it's interesting. Anybody that knows Bob McCready, he'll tell you that you need a lot of speed at Syracuse leading up to the Miller 300, but once they wave the initial green flag Sunday, you'll want just luck. That's the only element he'll talk about. But when it comes to modesty, Bob McCready leads everyone in that category, Andy.
I wonder if Gaston Salvis feels the same way right now, Tom. Let's develop our top 5, 7 laps into this race. Bob McCready's the leader. Brett Hearn is second. Doug Hoffman is third. A surprise 4th place runner, Steve Payne. 5th place, Frank Cozy, now being challenged by Danny Johnson right there in the 28J. And Cozy's number 7, that's an interesting story.
Yeah, if the fans look quick, they'll see the Freightliner color scheme, but that's number 7. Frank Cozy trading in his colors, the Waits Construction number 44, but he'll be running the Freightliner number 7 today and probably tomorrow in the Miller 300. So it'll be interesting to see how well the Freightliner team cars do. Like in the past, it's only been the Brett Hearn car, but now we'll have to watch 2. It'll be interesting to see if we can have them cars come across 1-2.
I asked Brett Hearn yesterday how he felt about having a teammate. He's never raced with a teammate before, and he pondered for a bit and then said, you know, when the green flag drops, everybody's the enemy. So they're really just teams and colors only. Frank Cozy and Brett Hearn are very much adversaries out on the racetrack. That's Mark Kenyon now being challenged by Frank Cozy. Kenyon going to go a lap down here. Kenyon won his spot for this race in a particularly fascinating manner.
Yes, that was interesting. And matter of fact, he only completed about 10 laps at Santa Super Speedway before he went in, and Brett Hearn jumped into his car. Brett Hearn worked his way up through the pack at Santa, finishing third on the Speedway. And that's the way the race ended. Mark Kenyon, because he started the number T17 car, he got the spot for the Winners Classic here at Syracuse. Kind of interesting sportsman award given to Mark Kenyon earlier in the season and this week on Dirt Show.
Yeah, they named him the driver of the week for, I guess, getting out of his car and giving it to another driver. He's out to prove that that was no fluke, that indeed he is a serious race driver. This is his freshman year here at Syracuse. He tried to qualify last year with what amounted to a sportsman car, and he wasn't able to get the job done. This year he's here with a full-blown big block modified. He's not in tomorrow's Miller 300 yet. He's been time trialing pretty well enough to get a pretty good starting spot in one of the non-qualifiers race. If he holds his own in the non-qualifiers race, he will be a rookie in the Miller 300. Meanwhile, up front, Bob McCready leading Brett Hearn comfortably, about 20 car lengths. McCready's been able to pull out to that advantage and remain about the same. Hearn's not closing in on him. McCready's not pulling away.
Well, it's interesting to look at Brett Hearn's car. If you notice the number scheme, it's a little different going into this year. Brett Hearn had a stable of 4 cars, 1 small block, 1 big block for his regular Saturday night track at Orange County, 1 big block for the big track races and 200 lappers, and the asphalt car. You can see by the big number on Brett Hearn's car when we get a close-up that is the asphalt car that he's campaigned at Sanair, Cayuga, Thompson.
And that he won with at the Pennsylvania International Raceway. The reason you can tell that's the asphalt car, the number's not on the side of the car, it's back on the rear deck. So Hearn has brought the asphalt car to Syracuse. Who inherits the big track car? Frank Cozy. It's now the number 7. Bob McCready motoring away. We've got more than 10 laps in the books of this one, and Bob McCready running high, wide, and handsome. Speaking of body styles, that's a particularly interesting one on that number 9. When he brought that car here on Wednesday, it had absolutely no paint, no numbers, no lettering. It was just primered white, and Bob McCready went out and put the car on the pole for the Miller 300.
Talking about an all-out racer, Andy. Bob said he traveled down to Hagerstown early in the week on Sunday. He didn't even have time to paint his car. He's racing 100% of the time. He doesn't even have time to put color scheme on his car. That shows you what kind of a racer Bob McCready is. He told me before that, like I said, speed has a lot to do with the racing leading up to the Miller, but he'll take luck anytime here at the Moody Mile. He doesn't even worry about painting his car. He just comes here and races.
Now there's Patty O'Brien in the number 1. He's running in the top 10 in about 9th or 10th spot. He won his qualifying event for this particular race this summer up in Lafargeville, New York at the Can-Am Speedway in a race that I and Dave Lake promoted. And that one was one of the upsets of the year. Pat O'Brien besting the best of the big block modified cars, and he did it with a small block modified.
Pat O'Brien has compiled 53 small block wins, but that first ever big block win on the dirt circuit will obviously be one of the most memorable in Pat O'Brien's young racing career, beating Brett Hearn by about 2 car lengths at the wire. All the fans were standing on their feet at the end, and I'm sure that he's going to try to run some big block races in 1991.
Now, meanwhile, back up to Cozy, who's still being challenged by Danny Johnson in the 28. One last point, we saw O'Brien being challenged by another Canadian number 1 of Joe Plosick. Plosick has elected to run this race in his backup car. Most of the drivers use this event as a shakedown for tomorrow's Miller 300. Not so with Joe Plosick. He's decided to bring the backup car out for this event and to save his top ride for tomorrow. It's interesting how this event was ever created in the first place. Promoter Glenn Donnelly here at Syracuse used to give the top qualified cars a practice session at the end of Saturday's events in years gone by at Super Dirt Week. The fans liked it so much, seeing the top 15 or 16 time trialers out in the track, that Glenn Donnelly decided to make a race out of it. Put together this all-star event, run it as a winner's classic. It started out as 15 laps, it then grew to 20 laps, and now it's 25 laps or 25 miles. It will pay a healthy $8,000 to the winner. If Bob McCready's able to win this, he will have won $16,000 this week, and we haven't even run the feature yet, the Miller 300. For winning the pole back on Wednesday and the heat race on Friday, he's already got $8,000 in the pocket. Right now, he's looking to win another $8,000 by leading this particular event. Meanwhile, Danny Johnson challenging Frank Cozy. Danny Johnson looking pretty good, and last year, these two fellas were the heartbreak story here at the Miller 300.
Yeah, it was interesting watching Danny Johnson last year. You'd think he had the race wrapped up. Coming out of turn number 3, the engine on the Troyer car let loose, and Bob McCready, sure enough, was in position. He waited patiently, comes out of turn 4. He's the new leader. Half a lap to go, and he takes the checker flag to win his second Winners Classic. McCready today looking for his third, an unprecedented number here in the Winners Classic. No one ever winning 3 before.
And of course, and there's Danny now passing Frank Cozy. And of course, who can forget that classic duel they had in the 1989 Miller 300? Lap after lap, they were running 1-2 as they closed in with only about 15 laps to go, going right there. Turn number 2 of the Moody Mile. Danny got underneath Cozy, and they both spun into the soft stuff. And Alan Johnson inherited the lead and his second ever Syracuse win. Right now, Steve Payne is delinquently behind the Mark Kenyon number 17. He can't get around it. He's had to slow. And Danny Johnson has closed right to the back bumper of the Yellowbird Payne 7X. And this, too, looks like a Saturday night Canandaigua battle. Looking at Payne and Danny running nose to tail.
Well, right now, you look at the top 5. Bob McCready, Brett Hearn, Doug Hoffman, Steve Payne, and Danny Johnson. 3 of the top 5 Canandaigua regulars on Saturday night throughout the summer. For the Canandaigua fans, it's the regular night of racing, but I'm sure it's a good show for the out-of-town fans that come in from tracks like Orange County or Lebanon Valley. They've heard of the names before, but here is what it looks like to compete every Saturday night at the Ontario County Fairgrounds in Western New York.
3 of the top 5, you got it right. That's why they call Canandaigua the land of legends. And now all 3 of those Chargers have gotten around Mark Kenyon. Payne, Danny, and Frank Cozy now have a clear track in front of them, and they'll try to close down on the leaders.
Right now, Bob McCready almost has lapped into the top 10. Less than 10 laps to go here in the 25-lapper. This will be interesting to see what McCready does at the end. I know he was put back for jumping the start, but it seemed to be all in vain. This is just the show that McCready wanted when the green flag flew.
We got a glimpse there of Lou Blaney in the 10 when Mark Kenyon held up the freight train for a while. Blaney was able to close in on Cozy, and now we've got 4 drivers battling for that position on the speedway. Meanwhile, Steve Payne doing a heck of a job. He's, I think, a rookie here at Syracuse. As far as racing goes, he's tried to qualify a few times in the past. Maybe he did qualify once. I don't know, certainly from my recollection. But this is clearly the best he's ever done on the mile.
Yeah, Steve told me before that he would like to come to Syracuse more often, but he's just under finance. He came here once, and he failed to qualify. He left early, and then he's here this year, and he seems to have a strong effort going. If you remember earlier in the summer, Steve Payne got a Syracuse qualifying spot at Woodhall in a different car, the Sherwood Racing Industries number 111 Junior. That was one of the most outstanding features of the summer, nipping Brett Hearn at the wire and holding off Doug Hoffman. That was one of the top 3 Syracuse qualifiers during the summer. But here, Steve Payne in the Yellowbird number 7X Kneisel car, strong 4th place showing right now in the Moody Mile in the 25-lapper.
And this is the 25th and final lap. Gaston has displayed the white flag. Bob McCready running high, wide, and handsome. Looks to have this one in his back pocket. And we talked, Tom, about what drivers bring what cars to Syracuse. Brett Hearn brings his blacktop car. Most drivers bring their long track car, but not Bob McCready. This is his short track Saturday, Sunday night car, just with brand new sheet metal. And that short track car has gone through the holes and won the A+ Mini Markets Modified Classic for 1990. A terrific 25-mile, $8,000 win for the Barefoot Wonder, Bob McCready. Pretty interesting story how he ever got that nickname in the first place.
Well, that's one that's been told many times again. It's kind of becoming legendary. It's one of the first cars that he ever drove in. The driver compartment was a little too tight on his feet. He had to take off one of his sneakers, and then that's where he got the nickname Barefoot Bob McCready. I'm sure he doesn't drive too much without a shoe on at Syracuse with the weather dropping below the 30-degree mark. But today, 80, who knows? Bob might get out of the car in victory lane with one shoe on, one shoe off. We'll have to see, Andy.
One of these days, if I was him, I'd take off my shoes before I climbed out of the car just to perpetuate the legend. Of course, he'll never have to do that. The legend is just that, a legend. Barefoot Bob McCready, the words just kind of roll off your tongue. There he is in the Syracuse frame service number 9. a Oldsmobile Calais body on that, one of only 2 on the dirt circuit. Joe Plosick has the other one. Both of the Olds Calais were built by Tim Hadd up there in Watertown, New York. Incidentally, Plosick you saw saluting his mentor, McCready, there in the back straightaway of the cool-down lap. The crowd loves it. Bob McCready is their favorite. For the 2nd consecutive year, he's been the most popular driver in the voting along the Skoal Super Dirt Series, and he won by a large margin both in 1990 and 1989. The fans love Barefoot Bob McCready. He's a favorite with the children. He'll take a lot of time to sit with the children after the races, sign autographs, chat with fans. You're right, he's a quiet and a reserved fellow, but he's as much of a sportsman as you'd ever want in this particular sport of dirt modified racing.
But there he acknowledges the crowd and some of his followers. I'm sure he'll be getting set in about 10 minutes. He'll be start thinking about the Miller 300 tomorrow, from which he starts the pole.
I wouldn't be surprised if he started thinking about tomorrow's race on about the 20th or 21st lap of this one. As the hole started to develop, the drivers realized that tomorrow's track conditions aren't going to be exactly favorable. They're going to be rough track conditions, and right now they're preparing for it. That's something they'll be spending all night working on. Let's go down to Brian Spaid. He's got our winner in tow.
Nice job. Those starts were fun, weren't they?
Well, it was my fault. I definitely was jumping. I was a little antsy, and so they just got through water on the outside of the racetrack, and it didn't quite seem fair, though. I had to start out in the water, and you know, the other guys had a smooth, dry track, so I was trying to get a little edge.
On the 2nd and clean start, you guys went into that turn real hard. In fact, Brett almost came close to you, didn't he?
Well, you need somebody you can trust and run alongside. I mean, man, that thing's fast out there, you know, and you gotta trust the guy. I put my hands in Brett, you know, and you know, he gave me a room, and we got right through there.
You were very fast. In fact, you came close to lapping the 5th place finisher.
Well, the car's hot, you know. I mean, we need brakes, we need luck, but the car's there, the crew's there.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Tom Skibinski, is Bob McCready going to have as easy of a time tomorrow in the Miller 300 as he had today?
Well, I keep reiterating Bob McCready's philosophy about the Moody Mile. The races leading up to the Miller 300, it's all speed. But come Sunday with the first green flag to start the Miller, it's all luck. That's what Bob McCready will tell you before the race. He'll win it. He'll tell you after.
Okay, Tom, thanks a lot. This concludes this triple header of Saturday action, but it doesn't conclude your home cassette. Stay tuned for the Sunday non-qualifiers event.